Hi everybody, this is Diane. I'm very excited to show these journals to you. These are the book readers journals that I've been working on for the last week or so, and I'm ready to show them to you, and this one is in my shop at the time this video goes up. So before I show them to you, I have to show you something funny. You see, this is the Music Hour third book and the Music Hour fourth book. I didn't realize until about a week ago that my scripture collage journal is the Music Hour first book. I mean, I knew it was when I made it, but it didn't occur to me as I started making this one for me that I already had a Music Hour book. But it's okay, because I love these books and I love both of these cover illustrations, and I'm happy with them. I just thought it was funny. So I'm going to show you this one first, because this is the one that's in the shop. I love the green and the dark blue, and I used navy blue seam binding to tie around it. It's got little music notes as a border. It's got a little boy sitting among the flowers playing his little flute. And there is a little spot on his elbow. It's something, it's not a stain, but it's something on it, dried on it, and it doesn't come off, and it was there when I got it. My book, where did I put it, has this blue circle here, like something got set down on it, you know. So these are old books. They're from the 40s or 30s. I don't remember which. So they're old. I did a whole series. If you didn't see it, there's a whole series, a start to finish series on the making of these journals, because someone requested that I do that. So that is, all those videos are in my shop. I think there were 5 videos, and then this one will be the 6th video. We have a vintage tea towel. No, this was a cafe curtain, because it had a casing at the top and some trim at the bottom. But I loved the texture of this piece, and it's white with some white and green lines, intersecting lines. Very simple. But then I cut these pieces out of a vintage tablecloth, and I have used that tablecloth to make journals with, but I had some pieces left. So I cut those pieces out, and I thought they were perfect with the colors of this. And then this is just a vintage embroidered ribbon, and I thought it all worked beautifully together. There are 3 signatures. I forgot to count how many. I think there's 9 pages, 9 folded pages, so 36 front and back in each signature, so multiply that by 3 and you get your pages. I put the first song in the book as your end paper. So this is the Music Hour third book, and it's Good Morning, and the melody is from Beethoven, from the 6th Symphony. I made this with oh, I should tell you that these are design team projects for Lorna Taylor at Taylor Made Journals, and I'm using her Shabby Chic wallpaper set number 1. So I used these papers as pages, and then I also made elements to add into the book with these pages. They're beautiful wallpapers. She has a lot of wallpaper sets. She has the Shabby Chic ones, I think 3 sets of that, and grungy wallpaper, and I'm not sure what else, but you get a lot of pages in every set that you buy from her. So it's well worth it. And right now they're on sale. Can't remember how long she's running her sale. And she doesn't normally do sales because her prices are already really, really reasonable. So anyway, I'm going to link her shop below. I'll link this kit below. I added this piece of vintage lace because it has this blue center, and I love it. And there's some vintage lace here. The vintage items in this book are basically the trims and the book illustrations. I included this tag that I made in my series of tags inspired by Nancy. So this is a vintage ledger and an image out of a pattern book for doll clothes. A little piece of vintage fabric, and it says delightful. It's just manila cardstock, and I didn't put a book plate here because I didn't want to cover that up, so I put this book, I stamped "This book belongs to" on the back. So you can write your name and the date and whatever. Now I'm going to use my book as a reading journal. So I write the names of the books that I've read. So for instance, I would probably start this page, books read in January 2022. And then I could list the books I read, the book, the author, and then maybe just a little bit about it, like the premise of the book or your thoughts about the book, your rating of it, or whatever information you want to include. And then I would also use pages and journal cards and journal spots to write quotes that I liked from the book. I don't put a quote from every book I read. Some books I just don't find that quotable. But I really enjoy doing that, and I really enjoy going back and reading over the quotes that I saved. But you can use this journal for whatever you want. So the images are taken from vintage children's books. And I did use just a few of Mrs. Cogg's A Good Book digitals. She always has these nice cards, and so there are people reading. So there are just a few of those in here, but mostly it's from digital or from vintage children's books. Okay, I think that's enough of the introduction. Let's get into the flip. This is one of Lorna's pages. I'm going to show you more of it when I pull this card out, but it's got a surprise on it. There's some vintage pink trim here, and this came from a vintage children's book. So there's this little journaling card in here. I added a vintage embroidered applique there. When you pull this out, hello, you get two frogs tipping their hat, and I think maybe she's singing, but it just looks like they're saying hello to you. And you can write a quote from the book, a book that you've read, or whatever you want to write on the back of that. I just love that. I tickled myself with that. On the backs of Lorna's papers, I printed a ledger paper from Nostalgia Graphic Land, and it's I don't know, colored landscape ledger or something. I'll try to link that, because I like, she has going like just one full sheet, 8.5 by 11, but then she has it also landscape, so that you can put it in this way and the lines will be going the right way. So that's what I use to back. This is vintage wrapping paper. Isn't it lovely? I used some scrapbook paper also. And this just came out of a magazine. It's just a list that says things to do. I did some stenciling on the white pages. There are some coffee dyed papers, but I didn't do a lot of distressing or inking otherwise in here. I added a lace tab or fabric tab in each signature with a button sewn on. There's a page from a small book in each signature. A patchwork puppy, adorable. There's a place to write notes, and then I added this little girl from a pattern book. It was for making doll clothes. Just a lined paper and a piece of Lorna's wallpaper, and then a page from a little strip torn from a children's book. This is from a children's book with these adorable little children on it, and then I made this tag or pocket with another illustration from a children's book and cardstock that I punched. This is one of Lorna's pages, her wallpaper, and I made pocket envelopes out of that for each signature in the books. And I just put a card inside with a children's book illustration, and it's blank on the back, so you can write on it. I just put a lined little note here that you can write a quote on. There's a fabric flip. This is one of Lorna's papers, and I thought it was perfect as a journaling spot. I love this little pig that I cut out of a book. One of Lorna's papers. I stamped this label in green and glued it on with another vintage applique. This is a fold a note with wild irises on it. You can open it up. This is where the center is tied, and I just decorated it with these little top note shapes that I punched out of leftover scrapbook paper, and I clipped this closed with a little teardrop paper clip. This is another of, I think this came with the pastel ledger pages from Nostalgia Graphic Land. There's a gorgeous little, it's not lace, but it is a fabric trim with a machine embroidered edge, and it is vintage. And I put this little cutout from a children's book up there. And this is a real vintage label from Denison. This is one of Lorna's wallpapers. I just made it into an angled pocket and green cardstock that's been punched with a scallop punch. And I love this image. It's very nostalgic for me. Put some computer lined paper on the back. There's a little fabric cluster with a cupcake on it. Look at those children. This came from a children's book, and I just put this page in there from a children's book. I did not give you a journaling spot on it. I just left it. It's got the nursery rhymes on it and pictures, but I did tuck this in so you could write on that. You can also write on the page behind it. Of course, this came from a children's book. And this is a tag I made quite a long time ago. I just love the colors, and it went well with this, I thought. And this is a vintage piece that I got in a Happy Mail. It has a German word on it. I put a fabric strip down the edge of that page. Here I have a belly band with Lorna's wallpaper and an illustration from a book. She looks a little disgruntled. And there is some more fabric trim. Is it the same? Yeah, it's the same as that one. Didn't realize I had done that. This came from another old book. If you see some of the illustrations that have orange in them, it might have come from this book, but I do have several books that have this kind of coloring in them. But this page is from 1930, this book. And there's space you can write on it if you want to, but I did include this piece that you can write on. Second signature starts out again with one of Lorna's pages, and I put a glassine bag on it and cut this out from a little Beatrix Potter book. And of course there's Jeremy Fisher, the frog from a Beatrix Potter book, and I sewed around that a couple of times with some messy stitching and then glued it to the card, so there's no sewing on the back of it, but you can write on this. And I put this fabric piece as a tab on that card. It's a nice roomy card for writing on, but I like to use the vellum or glassine bags because you can see through them, and I'm not hiding Lorna's pretty papers. There's some gift wrap of Kate Greenaway illustrations. I love this illustration from a Dick and Jane book. I just dismantled a replica large Dick and Jane book, and it had this illustration in it, but I had already cut this out and put it in here. And I thought, well, this book is getting the real deal because this is from a vintage book that was in really bad shape. And I love this picture. Some stenciling there in 2 colors. This puppy dog is just so cute. I glued him on. I used little illustrations where I would have stamped normally. There's no stamping in this book. I have so many children's book illustrations that I just went to town with them. There's a German book page. This book gets a couple of bonus pockets because this page printed portrait instead of landscape, so there was white here and white on the other side. And I didn't want to just cut that, and it was printed on the back of that, and so I wanted to use it. So I took another piece of Lorna's wallpapers and just made little pockets on both sides, and I love the blues together. And then this is in blues also, and this is a little, oh, it's from the Child's Garden of Verses, and this is what Robert Louis Stevenson put at the beginning of his book. Go, little book, and wish to all flowers in the garden meet in the hall, a living river by the door, a nightingale in the sycamore. So that was like a little introductory poem, but you can write on the back of that. Here is a more modern children's book page, just pretty colors, and I love this one from, I think this is from My Book House, one of the My Book House books. Just so cute. And here's one of the tags I made, inspired by Nancy. There is a fabric flip, and it's got some children there with a kite. And on the back, it's scrapbook paper, but I put a large piece of Lorna's paper that is light enough that you can write on. There's another book illustration there in place of a stamp. One of Lorna's papers and a stamped label, little applique. And here is the fold-a note in the center of this. Love her. Love this vintage lace also. Another of Lorna's papers. It's backed onto cardstock. It's quite heavy, and there's just a little trim on the side there. And another of my tags, inspired by Nancy. These are vintage star stickers. And this is the Owl and the Pussycat poem, glued to vintage ledger. This is a little piece of linen that I sewed some fabric pieces to, and I just sewed it on as a pocket. There's one of Mrs. Cog's images, and a little Kate Greenaway gift tag that came with the Kate Greenaway wrapping paper. Here's just an illustration that I glued on as an extra pocket, and this came from a really old children's book. It was a pretty fragile paper, but it is now backed onto sturdy cardstock. And another Mrs. Cog's image. This is me when I was young. I was always sitting in a chair with a book with more books beside me. This came from a children's book, and it's a little girl reading to her siblings. And there is a tapestry behind them. It's backed onto an old page from a vintage photo album. This is the other bonus pocket where the page was white. And another pocket, or envelope, that I made with Lorna's papers, and there's a illustration of a duck. I just love the soft colors that were in this book. I think this was a Tom and Betty book, which is like Dick and Jane, but maybe older. At least this book was older than the Dick and Jane books that I had in school. Anyway, the colors on all the illustrations in those books were so soft and pretty. That's one of Lorna's wallpapers. Isn't that pretty? And I just put in a Beatrix Potter piece with some ducks, and you can make notes on the top and bottom if you want, but I didn't want to cover either side. It does go in there. Here's the other side of that German children's book page. There's another lace tab with a button sewn on. Another belly band. I thought it just looks like it was made that way, but this is fussy cut from a children's book and glued onto one of Lorna's wallpapers. But her dress matches it. His crown has a deeper color like that, so it just looks like it was made to go there. some vintage trim on the edges. And I love this, the colors of this scrapbook paper with these colors too. I just think that page looks really nice. And then this was from a book about mythology, some mythology stories for children. And another While You Were Out with another page from illustration from a children's book. If you can see it, there is a bunny on their lap, and they've tied a bonnet on the bunny's head. When we go through my book, you'll see the next illustration from there with the bunny running away. The third signature has another beautiful wallpaper and this pretty sheer embroidered ribbon and a Mrs. Coggs image. And some pretty blue trim lace. There's some cowboy gift wrap, a to-do list, and a little frog and a robin. Love this illustration up here. So cute. Fabric with a button. A cloth book page. And another note place and some black and white children. There's another pocket that I edge punched, and another page. Lorna's Tailor-Made Journals papers. There's one of those orange colored illustrations. I know I'm showing you a lot of details, but I want you to see them all. This is from a vintage library book. It's dated 1963 and the last date is 65, but there's lots of room to write on that. A fabric flip, and I glued on this piece that I had stamped onto blue cardstock and cut out. This was in my stash, so I glued that on and added these little cutout pieces from a children's book. Another stamped label with a butterfly applique. And this it's plain inside, but it's a cherry. I like that it's shape cut there. Cherry fold-a-note. Look at this gorgeous wallpaper. It's a digital, but it's pretty. And I love this image of the ducks and the pretty eyelet lace with the blue ribbon in it. I put a colorful pocket here because of the colorful paper behind it. I used that music paper because this was originally a music book. And that is just a cute little mother duck and her babies. Look at the little one floating down with an umbrella. And inside I tucked another colorful piece, it's from a vintage book, but it's Winkin', Blinkin', and Nod. Jack and Jill with a little fabric cluster. Here's another little orange illustration that I glued on as a pocket. Here's a Mrs. Coggs image and another Kate Greenaway gift card. Another page from the mythology book. And then this was so cute. I wish it was in a tuck spot over here, but it's over here. But it's a kitten looking at herself in the mirror with this beautiful blue ribbon, and there's roses on the mirror, a little pink brush and comb set. It's just so cute. I backed it with cardstock. And then the last belly band with Lorna's papers, and they're back to cardstock, all of them are, and I added these little monkey pictures and the green rickrack. So I thought all of these colors worked well together. I had fun doing those pages. Another Mrs. Coggs image, and the other side of the cowboy wrapping paper. And finally, it's the other side of that sheer pocket. I'm just going to snip that little thread off. And this tag that I made with in my series of tags inspired by Nancy. This is cut from an old children's book, and then all of these little fussy cuts Someone who watched my video as I made this said she was surprised that I didn't lose that little duck. And I'll tell you what, I was surprised too, because I lose everything, and that is so tiny. This is just a piece of linen up here as a tab, and I added a little extra piece of blue, just a little scrap that I had to help tie in with the blue here. There's blue there. So I just love this book. I did put my signature over here instead of on the back of the tag, because there was a nice space for it. So this is just tied with this navy blue seam binding, as I said, and now I will show you mine. I did use some of my favorite laces and illustrations and things because I'm keeping this. I cut my seam binding a little short, but that's okay. There's my binding with the pretty flowers. Now, I mentioned this, I showed this picture when I made one of my tag videos and said I had to use her somehow, and I decided not to add anything extra. I tried different laces and trims and stuff, and some tissue or tracing paper. I tried different things, and I thought, nope, she just looks great on that ledger, and that's all she needs. I just put some vintage photo and then one of the pink colored inks around the edge, and that's all I did. Well, I sewed around it and added this, but I love her. This is Sally from a vintage Dick and Jane book. Sally and her teddy bear. I did the same treatment on the inside and paper. So I have a tuck spot here, but it doesn't have that cute wow factor of the frogs coming out, but it does have this cute illustration. And I love this trim. It's got a lace, vintage lace here, and this very delicate, almost ruffle. It's not quite ruffled. So pretty. I think this was for a baby dress, that kind of trim. And a vintage gift paper, gift wrap. Another illustration from Dick and Jane. There's Sally again. Cloth page. I liked using the black and white images to accent these notes because I think a colored one would have interfered with or blended into the colored paper back here, so I like the black and white. This is from a little notepad. It's got this damask design on it, but you can write on it. I can write on it. It's from a songbook. That's from that Tom and Betty book with the soft illustrations that I was talking about. So I used Lorna's pages not only for the book pages, but envelopes, belly bands, well, I thought I just saw one, but it was in the other book, I guess. But the edge decoration and other things. This is one of Mrs. Cogg's images. I've had it in my stash. She has a set of library cards that have famous authors and books. So this one is The Hobbit, J.R.R. Tolkien. I cut her from a book. I liked the colors of her with these colors. This might be from Victoria Designs, but I don't remember. And there's a little girl blowing bubbles on that fabric flip. I used to love blowing bubbles, even as an adult. Love this little duck. She's just so precious. I love her shoes. I love her apron. I love the expression on her face. I love the colors. Just so cute. There's a fold a note with a folk art design. Looks like her hat is blowing away in the wind. Look at this lace, this trim. I really wanted to make sure I kept some of that. There's another of those angled pockets, vintage label, and Proserpina. Oh, Proserpina. Proserpina? I don't know how to say that, because I thought it was Prosperina until I really looked close. But she's from the mythology book. There's a cluster there. We used to have some children's 45 records that we would play, my sister and I, in our bedroom. Just stack them up, and then they would drop down. As each one was finished, the next one would drop down. But oh dear, what can the matter be? Johnny's so long at the fair. That was one of our records. That's what that song is. He promised to buy me a bunch of blue ribbons. Beautiful little illustration I just glued there. This is Little Women. It's a tiny little tuck spot, and I just added this card for journaling. Another illustration from the My Book House books. And this gorgeous tag made with a lovely greeting card, a vintage greeting card. There's that duck again, but this time she looks mad. She's still styling though. And love this. I didn't add anything to the back because it was pretty on both sides, but I did tuck this in so I'd have that to write on. Here we have the Glassine bag. This one was embossed. It was in my stash that way. I embossed it, but I hadn't used it yet. Beautiful, beautiful lace on the edge. And then this card, I used Beatrix Potter again for the Glassine bag and the card. I think this is from the mythology book, but it's black and white this time. There's that bunny running away, and the bonnet is falling off him as he runs. It's a pretty little button on this blue embroidered trim. There's that patchwork puppy book. There's one of Laura's pages on the edge. I just tore it. I think this poem might have gone with that girl whose hat was blowing off. It's about the wind. And a Kate Greenaway gift enclosure. Another one of Lorna's papers that I can write on. A very old book illustration. I love this fold-a note with the patchwork folk art look to it. And look at her. I think I only had one of these. I might have gotten it in a Happy Mail, and I wanted it, so I put it in my book. There's an illustration from an old book. This is a tag I had made previously. It was in my stash, but the colors went well here. And this is a genuine Victorian cutout piece. It's embossed, you can feel it. It's pretty fragile. So now it's glued down and safe. This is one of Lorna's wallpapers. And I love the colors of this with this note paper. Look at that cute little girl. Little Miss Muffet. There's another illustration from Tom and Betty. And this is from a Mother Goose book. I like this one because I do bake quite a bit. Love this illustration. That's from Dick and Jane, I think. Love this rose wallpaper, digital. Okay, the third signature, we have a green wallpaper digital, green and gold. And I love this vintage green trim with it. And this very wide sheer embroidered ribbon. So I put in, this was in my stash. I'd made it not too long ago. Fingers and toes. cut from a Mother Goose book. So I put that in there because it's nice and big. And then I showed in a previous video that I had these tags that I'd made quite a long time ago. I had a digital set of journaling cards that included 3 cards with the poem, parts of the poem of Frog. He did a wooing go. So I wanted all those tags to stay together in one book. So they're in this signature in my book. So I just made these, like I said, a long time ago out of scrapbook paper, cardstock. And you will see the other ones as we go through this signature. Look at those cute little ducks. This is a fabric textured page, Daffy Down Dilly and Ride a Cock Horse. So they're little nursery rhymes. Another date due slip from a library book. This one went from 1966 to 1985. This is The Little Engine That Could. And I backed it with red cardstock and punched it. And here is an illustration. This must be Miss Mousie from the Frog. He did a wooing go because Miss Mousie was who he was a-wooing. I have some vintage trim there. And I had one little piece of this paper doll fabric left from when I made paper doll journals. So I made a fabric flip with that and just glued some elements here to journal on. Love this trim, so I got a piece of that in there. This one I didn't glue down as a pocket. I don't know why, but I didn't. And we have another pocket made with a illustration from my book house. And this came from a vintage book about international dolls. And I cut her out, put her on cardstock. I love her. I've had that a long time, and I think that might be the only illustration I had left from it. And the last belly band, I forgot to put something in there, but this is my book, so I'll find something to tuck in. I love the old lace on the edges. So she was fussy cut from a Mother Goose book and then added to this green and this geranium printed wallpaper digital. And here is the third. There's Mr. Frog. And I tucked a little Kate Greenaway gift tag in there. And I did sign it. It's my own book, but I signed it for future generations. So there they are. I loved making these books. I had so much fun. You know I love children's book illustrations. So it was really awesome to just have books dedicated to filling them up with children's book illustrations. So whoever purchases this book, I'm going to send along some extra pages from children's books that you can cut from. And maybe some other things. I don't know yet, but I have to clean up my mess here and see what I have that I might want to include. But definitely some children's book pages. So I hope that you like these books. Please leave a comment. I really enjoy reading your comments, and they do help my channel out. Especially give a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But I really do love reading your comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a creative day today. I will just say that there's 1 week left till Christmas. Today is Saturday as I make this video, and so Christmas is next Saturday. So I don't know if there will be a lot of videos in the next week. I think I'm going to focus on, besides getting ready for Christmas, I think I'm going to focus on cleaning and organizing my space once again, because I need to do it periodically, and maybe do some destashing. And I might do a little crafting in there. I don't know. I'm not going to stress myself out about any of that. So I just don't know how visible I will be for the next week. So I am looking forward to visiting with you some more next year, and can't wait to see what we do next year. Have a creative day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.